To everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time for every purpose under heaven.
Judy, to be honest, I'm having some serious internet problem here. I just changed the Wi-Fi. Hope things will be okay from now. So can you hear me well?
Yes.
Oh, that's something great. So first of all, there's someone really special in our today's session. I didn't tell you about her. Actually, I invited Joan today to be with us tonight. Uh, and she's gonna come and join us after the session, and we might sing a few songs.
My God. Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I did. Judy, this is like a completion of a dream for me. Interviewing three most influential figures of my life. First Leonard, then Joan, and now you. Uh, mm, I remember Joan telling me that I might be the last one to interview Leonard, though I'm not sure about it.
I'll bet you were. I'll bet you were, exactly.
Oh my goodness, this means a lot to me.
Well, you're lucky you got him when you did. My God.
I just can't express all the feelings I have for Leonard. And it's such a privilege, all I can say. Well, Judy, you have learned classical music. You have learned opera. You were a great pianist in your young age. So, how did you get into folk music afterwards and all the activism you did in the 60s and you're doing till now? I mean, you could have been a professional classical musician rather than being a folk musician. So, how did you get into that path?
Well, a lot of it came because of the way I was raised in my family. My father was a wonderful singer, and he had a radio show for 30 years. And he sang all the songs of Rodgers and Hart, but he also sang a lot of traditional songs like Danny Boy. And he would sing these airs, these English, Irish, and Scottish airs. So I was sort of a little bit familiar with that area, not only the Great American Songbook, but also the traditional things that he sang. And then, of course, I started playing the piano when I was 4, and I studied all through my young years and all up to the time I was about 15. I played with an orchestra, but I also sang with the choirs, the church choir, the school choir. I did a lot of performances singing on the stage, and I had a little trio with a couple of other women who danced, and I sang. So I was always performing. But when I was 15, I heard two songs that changed my life. One of them was called The Gypsy Rover, and one of them was called um, um, Barbara Allen. And I heard those songs on the radio, and they changed my life. And I decided I had to have a guitar and I had to start singing folk songs. And I joined the Denver Folklore Society, and that was the beginning. And I then took off. I did not start to sing professionally till I was 19, in 1959, which is something like 64 years ago, I guess. But I started to get paid for singing in 1959, and that's where it all started, and I've never stopped.
I was listening to your album continuously for the last 3 or 4 days, and it somehow helped me go back to my folk roots, to all my folk roots all over again. And undoubtedly, it was such a dynamic experience, as a music listener. Uh, I was actually spellbound by the album. I remember Joan in 2015 when I interviewed her. She told me that she's expecting an original album from Judy. That would be an absolute surprise for her. And now in 2022, you finally released Spellbound with your own songs, own music, own lyrics. So my question was, why did it take so many years?
Well, after I met Leonard and he told me, he said, I don't know why you're not writing your own songs. This was in 1966, and I had been recording. I had recorded 5 albums already, and I was singing traditional songs, and then songs of Pete Seeger, Woody Guthrie, Bob Dylan, Tom Paxton, Richard Farina, Phil Oakes, Eric Anderson. So I had done a lot of singing of other people's songs. And when he asked me that, I went home and wrote a song called Since You've Asked. And from then on, I've always written songs. I've written about 60 songs that I've put on different albums. Because, and why did it take me so long to write enough to fill an album? Well, I started to get really focused on the songwriting again. Well, I was always doing it. And I wrote some big and very important songs. I wrote My Father, I wrote Secret Gardens, I wrote Albatross, which I wrote for Joan, actually, about Joan. And I wrote the big song about my about Colorado called The Blizzard. That's a very important song in my repertoire. I wrote it in 1916, in 89, actually. In 89, yep. Is that right? Yeah, I think so. Because it was written in Colorado, in New York, in Connecticut, but I sang it at a show in Aspen in 1989, and it was on a film, on a series by A&E, and it was a big concert. It was, Chris Christopherson was on that concert. This is the year, this is the anniversary. Let's see, is that right? No. In 1971, Bobby McGee was a big hit for Janice, and that was a song by Chris. I actually was thinking about it because I looked at that today. It was on Facebook, and I thought, oh, it's interesting because Chris came to see me in 1964, and he played me Bobby McGee, and I said, nah, it's not for me. And of course, later on in 1989, I sang it with him on this show that I did, but I also sang the Blizzard because I'd written the Blizzard. So I've written a lot of songs. So in a way, 60 songs is almost a career as a songwriter already. But finally, I got very serious in about 2016 about my writing, my poetry, my singing writing, my songwriting. So that was when it kicked in and when I had enough songs. And now I'm collecting them to go forward because I'm writing so many that I've got to do it again.
Well, Judy, if we look back at the music scene of the 60s and then look towards today's music scene, there has been a humongous change throughout the years. My question was, how do you see this change? Do you find it problematic anyhow?
I have to do what I do. So it doesn't matter to me what other people are doing. I'm not interested. Oh, I might go see somebody, but I'm not interested in other, let us say, evolving artists. They're interesting, but I'm interested in my own evolution. I can't focus on other people's. So I've had some very strong influences, like Leonard, and of course, like as far as songwriting, like Joni Mitchell. I've sung a lot of her songs, and like Jimmy Webb, I think he's the master of the great big song about well, he's written a song about Gauguin, for instance, which is magnificent. I have to start doing it again. I did record it, and of course the Highwayman, which I sing in concerts and which I've recorded. But he and I talk about this a lot, that I try to to focus on what I'm doing. I can only focus on that. So where I'm going with my songwriting, it all depends on how much, where I can gather the songs, how much time I can spend at the piano working on. I work on the piano, not the guitar, and but I do take shortcuts. For instance, I keep in my telephone, write down everything. So when I hear something and I hear a phrase, and I grab my phone. I'm not ashamed of doing this. I grab my phone and I write down things like Paris, the Resistance. That's the name of a new song, a new book, a book that Jackie Kennedy edited. Peter Granger books, The Bold Marauder. That's a song of Mimi and Dick Farini. Take It Easy. That's that great song that Jackson Browne sang with Lindley, whatever his name was. Shoot, Ready, Aim. Tell Me It's Not Only Me. Daughter of Spies, Burma Shave. The nature of fragile things. They call it Devil's Throat. Hoping for a Miracle. Linda, the prettiest. Let's see, what else have I got in here? So I write fragments of things down. One of these days I'll get back to Baker Street. I don't know what that song is about or where it's going to go, but I'll write down Only a Pawn in Their Game. I have to remember to sing that. So I'm always thinking about phrases and things that appear to me, and then I'll take them to my piano and print them out and try to figure out if they're a song. So it's changed my approach to doing that. What I used to do to write songs is to sit down at the piano. I had more time then. Now I'm on the road all the time, so I'm home less. Well, right now I'm okay because they've canceled the 3 weeks in Australia, which I was supposed to be at now, but I'm going to go in February of 24. So I have some time, but usually I'm on the road. So I have to do this in order to gather enough energy and ideas to go to the piano and figure them out.
Judy, would you please say something about Leonard's last album, You Want It Darker? Because I find it to be really, really underrated, It's criminally underrated. And I remember when I asked him about the album, he told me that, son, I'm not making this for the masses. I know that it's not going to be a chartbuster hit or something like that. But if one person listen to the songs and the songs makes him think about the certain issues that I'm trying to convey with my songs throughout the album, I will be the happiest one. This is what he told me.
Oh, well, he was summarizing what we all feel about the world, that we're falling apart. And we're falling apart in the wrong direction. We have, and the last song of his that I recorded was Everybody Knows. Do you know that song? It's a phenomenal song. And I've taken trips with him. I've recorded Democracy, which was a very heavy-hitting song. And Everybody Knows is right up there with You Want It Darker. This was something that was going on in his mind, writing what he really felt about the planet and about our direction of life on the planet. And, it's panning out right now. I mean, the planet is falling apart. We've done so many things to it. And we have followed the line of least resistance, which is war at all counts. War everywhere we can fight it, everywhere we can do it. The basis of so many countries, including our own, is selling arms. That's where we make our money. We're trading arms to this and that in the other country, and we're making money on the arms industry. And we have, I found that when I was the UNICEF representative, I had some involvement in going to the former Yugoslavia, where I didn't know anything about landmines. And when I got there, I found out that we were looking at, we were at a school in Dubrovnik, outside of Dubrovnik, and there was a table down on the ground floor, and all these children sitting in the audience. And the general who was giving this lecture was pointing out all these different landmines, and they started 100 years ago, and then it wound up to, and they were metal ones and so on. So it ended with a whole bunch of landmines at the end of the table that were designed to look like candy wrappers and Coke bottles that children would pick up, and then they'd blow up in their face. Then I discovered that a lot of companies in this country, and everybody else, of course, is involved in making the parts for landmines. I mean, this is, Leonard got it. He always understood. I just wrote a note to somebody on Facebook because they had no money and no access to getting my songbook, and so they put it together page by page. They found it on YouTube, they found it on iTunes. They picked up pieces and made their own songbook of mine. And so I wrote back to him and I said, that's a book I wrote in 1969, at 1969, right, 69. And it was it was 7 chapters of memoir, the first time I had written memoir. And the woman who helped me edit it was introduced to me by Leonard Cohen. He introduced me to a couple of women who became best friends. And so Yaffa Lerner and I sat on the floor of my apartment. Was it this one? No, it was my next to the last apartment I lived in. And we sat on the floor and put all the pages on the floor, and then we put them together and made our choices. But she was my editor, so I inherited a lot of things from Leonard. I inherited a friend named Nancy Bacall, who was probably the last person to actually see Leonard alive. You were probably the last person to interview him, I would think. And then Nancy was probably the last person to see him alive. Yaffa Lerner was my editor on my first book of memoir. And Nancy Bacall, who became my close friend, called me one day in 73 and said, you have to listen to the recording of Little Night Music, which is where I found Send in the Clowns. So Leonard's presence, including with You Want It Darker, is all around me. And I listen to him. I'm inspired by him. I'm depressed when I hear, the songs that he was writing, but they're wonderful songs.
Well, if we talk about the folk revival movement of the 60s, it started a whole new wave of music all around the world. We got songs of activism, songs against the autocracy, songs with a certain socio-political consciousness. But why the hell it lost all the certain spirit, all the consciousness afterwards? I mean, why these days people don't make songs with socio-political consciousness?
I think that I don't know what it is. I think we're distracted. Most people are very distracted and they're very fragmented. There seems to be not the time to focus or the desire to focus and to actually I was interested in a song that Bonnie Raitt was nominated for, and she got the Grammy for the Song of the Year, and it's something called Quick or Right Now or Just Now, and it's about a woman who meets with the man whose heart her son gave because her son died, and then he had one of those. He was an organ donor, and she met up with the man who got her son's heart, and it's a very moving song. And I thought, well, that's a moment. I mean, that's amazing that became the Song of the Year that was chosen by the Grammys. And I think it's a good sign because it's a very personal song. And I think in terms of writing a socially conscious song, it has to be personal. Yeah, it can be big and it can be like We Shall Overcome, which was, of course, a spiritual, a Negro spiritual in the churches. And songs like We Shall Overcome have been sort of a foundation of political change. They always come up when you're talking about political change. There's also a song that Mimi Farina set to music called Bread and Roses, which is about the women's movement. Nobody knows it. I mean, very few people know the song because it didn't become a big popular song. Um, but it is a standard. People always, the other day, we put it on my social media because it's such an important song. The poem was actually written in 1912 because of the big fire here at the shirt factory where so many women died. And really, it's about the workforce, about the treatment of women. Anyway, every once in a while you hear a song which is magnificent and which represents this movement that you're talking about that people don't seem to drift to normally today. I don't know what's on the hit parade today, but I certainly don't listen to it because it bores me. Most of it bores me. Oh, it doesn't have story content. It's not the thing anymore. The thing anymore is to have a strong backbeat and a repeated lyric. Oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my. That would constitute a lyric, There's no storyline. So what I think is that people have lost the ability to listen to stories and to tell their own stories. And that's what was so extraordinary about the 60s because people who came into, Pete Seeger and Woody Guthrie started writing because they were raising money for the union. That was always what it was about. And they wanted to write songs that would attract the power of unionizing, which means to personalize the idea of what we do when we work. We work and we give up our essence to a job, which will make us a living, but which will also create things of use in the world. And so that's why they started writing these songs, and some of them became, like This Land Is Your Land, became a national anthem, really, in this country. The one that Woody wrote, and of course Pete wrote Where Have All the Flowers Gone, for the same reasons. I was looking at Pete's show, Rainbow Quest, in which he was interviewing. I was on it once, and I sang with him a couple of songs. And he was interviewing Mimi Farina and Mimi Baez Farina and Dick Farina. I was very friendly with them. They used to stay in my apartment, my old apartment, when they came to New York. And I was very close to Mimi. But I don't know why we've drifted away from stories. I mean, I just think that everything is moving so fast. People are moving so fast. They're changing jobs. They're reinventing themselves. They're galloping along the road to success. They don't have time to sit still and to write poetry and to read Emily Dickinson and to write songs like Leonard Cohen. But maybe things are changing. I don't know.
Judy, you're talking, and as I'm listening to you, I am practically having goosebumps here. And I just can't express all the feelings I'm having right now. I guess I'm pretty emotional by seeing you, by having you here.
I'm getting it. Thank you.
Well, as you told about the song We Shall Overcome and how it became a global anthem, I have a small story to tell you. It's about Pete when he came to Kolkata for the first time in his life. Some activist took him to a village, and there was a little girl with her family. And Pete saw that she was singing the Bengali version of the song We Shall Overcome. And the little girl didn't know that she was standing in front of the creator of the song and he was Pete Seeger. She had no idea about that. And there was Pete standing in wonder. He was crying and crying and crying and crying.
That's a wonderful story. That's delicious. Yeah, I love that. That's great. Yeah, he was amazing. You know, I was not with my parents when they died. I was not with my beloved brother or with my son when they died, but I was with Pete Seeger when he died. He died 2-3 hours after I left seeing him for the last time at the hospital here up the street from where I live. His grandson called me up, and Katami called me up and said, Pete wants to see you. He's on his way out. And so my husband and I went up to Presbyterian Hospital, and he couldn't speak. And I sat, everybody else left the room, and I sat next to him and I sang Bells of Rimney and a couple of his other songs. And he held my hand very tightly. And I told him how much he meant to us. And he was a very focused man. He was a very intense liver of his own dream, his own concept, his own visions. And he was a unique man. But, you know, it's interesting because I always tell people that are with their nearest and dearest when they die that they're very lucky to have been there during the passage. And I was pretty close to Pete Seeger's passage. It's interesting because because in a way, he became my grandfather, my father, my teacher, because I met him in 1961 when I got to New York, and I was singing here, and I went to my manager's office, Harold Leventhal, and he was asleep. Pete Seeger was asleep behind the couch with his banjo stretched out beside him, and I said, Harold, is that Pete Seeger? I mean, my God. And he said, yes, he's trying to get a nap, so please don't wake him up. And we were friends. We had a lot of concerts together, a lot of social time together. So it was interesting that was a gift to me to be there at his passing. And, I don't recommend hanging out with people that are dying necessarily, but if it happens and you're a close person, then it's a blessing that you were there.
Well, I used to listen mostly when I feel depressed, when I feel kind of broken inside. The 1971, I guess, version of you and Pete singing together with your 12-string guitar, Turn, Turn, Turn. And it's, just it brings tears in my eyes. It's so divine.
It's a wonderful moment to remember. I mean, I was lucky. Yeah. I was very close to both of them. I sang at Toshi's funeral when she died, and I don't know that I sang at Pete's funeral. I don't know. I think I was probably on the road. That's what happens when you have a career like mine. Sometimes you miss the funerals because you're on the road, which I guess that's saying something. I'm on the road singing Pete Seeger.
Well, Judy, do you have any plans to visit India someday? Because, that would be an absolute surprise for me.
Oh, my, I would love to come to India. Called Sotheby's. And when she was retired from there, her greatest desire was to go to Calcutta and meet Mother Teresa. Which she did.
Well, you know about Calcutta?
And she became very involved with the in Calcutta.
You know Calcutta?
And she started the first Alcoholics Anonymous. Well, I don't know it, but my friend told me a lot about Calcutta, and she was always talking about Mother Teresa. and she started, actually, Mother Teresa said to her one day, I can heal anybody, but I can't heal alcoholics. You have to start. She was sober a long time. You have to start Alcoholics Anonymous in Calcutta, which my friend did. And then my friend she went to Calcutta every year and always told us all about it when she came back. And I was always intrigued, and I always wanted to go. And when Mother Teresa was sainted, they had 100 people come who knew Mother Teresa. And my friend, Lorna Kelly was her name. My friend Lorna was one of those people who went to Rome. There were 100, and told her story about, the good things that Mother Teresa had done. So I feel a closeness to Calcutta, although I've never been there. But my friend told me all about it. I'll be there one of these days, I'm sure.
Absolutely, I'm welcoming you. It would be such a pleasure for
Yeah.
us to have you here in Kolkata.
I'm looking forward to it. It'll happen. I'm sure.
Thank you very much, Judy. It was such a nice meeting.
So it was wonderful talking to you.
Thank you very much.
All right,
All right.
take care of yourself and wait for me.
Okay, absolutely.